Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 5858. I am Amish Cycle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
Are about to skyrocket for more than 20 million Americans. Where is the plan from the White House or Congress before they go home for the holiday? Tonight, new images showing an out-of-control car slamming into a hardware store. There's news tonight nearly 3 decades after the killing of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey. In New York City tonight, the major change, Pope Leo, with his first major shakeup in the U.S., replacing Cardinal Timothy Dolan. The flu fears tonight, right before the holiday, the new warning this evening about a powerful new flu variant. And our great Made in America Christmas 1 week to go, from the sunglasses JFK once wore to the famous brass buttons. The ideas tonight with some American history.
Taste of winter closes highways and schools in some of Canada's most weather-resilient regions.
It sucks.
Where the storm system is heading next. Also on this Thursday night, the White House wish list. U.S. officials make their demands to keep Canada's free trade deal alive. The response from the PM. Pipeline politics.
At the end of the day, the Prime Minister has to decide.
How the opposite leader says he would handle concerns from Indigenous leaders about a proposed pipeline. Plus,
Tonight, Jessel.
Good evening and thank you for joining.
Those who did venture out didn't get far. Like
It's all, take from
lead in simply clip through Alberta gap when digging to Saskatchewan CMP. There are 82 reported 18 years of snow in Saskatchewan and as much as 13 centimeters of Regina.
Sucks. Yeah, it's no. So looking forward to that. It was crazy. That's a wildest.
Southern Alberta saw winds of 80 to 130 kilometers an hour when the storm hit Wednesday. Thursday, though, the scene at this Calgary dog park was chilly but calm.
Well, the prairies may be through the condition is
about to get very cold with most of Saskatchewan.
We may have short-term some people and long-term the country.
Trump took office, and you compare that to the Biden years when it was up
By virtually every country in the world.
I mean, we know that inflation has gone up 1.86% since President Trump took office. And you compare that to the Biden years when it was up 21.5%. So it is edging in the right direction. What do you see that looks good and what concerns you?
I think this whole story is really good and probably better than people thought. By the way, if you want the tariff issue, where everyone went crazy, including Jay Powell at the Fed, tariffs are going to cause inflation, tariffs are going to cause inflation. Nothing of the sort occurred. And I just wanted to read you from today's CPI report. We look at goods prices, which is the most tariffable, and not services, but goods, right? Goods prices, the last 12 months, 1.8%. If you take out food and energy, it's 1.4%. I mean, there's not a problem there. And the other thing overall, look at last 3 months, okay, CPI is up 2.1. Core CPI is up 1.6%. It's in effect that, families who are worried about take-home pay, that was Ronald Reagan's old line, and Mr. Trump is using wages less inflation be 3 to 4 percentage points. That's unbelievable. And he said last night, I just want to
higher than last year?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the wage rates right now are running 4 to 5%, really closer to 5% from the employment report we just got. So your inflation is running at slightly above 1. That's all it is, okay? So that leaves you a big gap, right? A take-home bill after tax income. That's what people want. That's kitchen table stuff. So last night, Trump says we're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. We're the hottest country anywhere in the world. I happen to agree with that, and I think he should stay on that and really campaign on it for the midterms. You could grow next year at 5% GDP.
I heard you say that.
With
so
something
you
like
see 5% growth in Q1?
1.5% inflation. And for the year as a whole, I mean, the quarters will jump around. Look, here's another one. One big, beautiful bill, deregulated energy, okay? This is so important. $100 price of barrel of oil at the beginning of Trump's term. It's now 55, 56. So gasoline prices are coming down. That's going to be reflected in a lower inflation report. But remember,
This is Sky News Today. It is 10 o'clock. I'm Samantha Washington with your headlines. The EU agrees at new funding for Ukraine's war effort, but there is no deal on frozen Russian assets. Russia accuses the EU of being warmongers. We'll hear from President Putin as he holds his marathon end-of-year TV news conference. Also this hour, the government confirms a Foreign Office data breach, but says it's pretty confident that no individuals have had their details compromised. In Sydney, surfers and swimmers pay tribute to the victims of the Bondi attack. And the trolls who abuse the relatives of missing people. Jay Slater's mother tells Sky News that she is still being targeted 18 months after her son's death. Plus, the mysterious object in the sky that has got some scientists talking about an alien invasion. Very good morning. Thank you for joining us here on Sky News. European Union leaders 90 50 billion euro Ukraine's for another 2 years. They've not to agree using Russian assets. Moscow has called EU leaders warmongers and said that any use of Russian reserves to fund Ukraine would be illegal. Let's bring in our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, now. Good morning to you, Alistair. So much needed funds for Ukraine's war effort, but it's quite different signalling, isn't it, to give them a loan rather than handing over frozen Russian assets?
Yeah, it's a deal, but it's not the deal that we were expecting. I mean, the headline is that Ukraine is getting the money that it needs. Without it, by April, they could start to basically run out of money. Volodymyr Zelensky was here in Brussels yesterday to make the plea to leaders in person. When I spoke to him after that, he said drone manufacturing, weapons manufacturing, for example, wouldn't be possible if they didn't have this money. Basically, it would really put at risk Ukraine's ability to carry on fighting Russia and defending its own territory. So it's really vital money. And I don't think ultimately Ukraine will really care too much about how it gets to them as long as they get that money. The plan had been to use frozen Russian assets, most of which are being held at a clearing house here in Brussels, and give that money to Ukraine. That always had a bit of opposition, particularly from the Belgians, because they felt, perhaps justifiably, that they would be very exposed to any Russian retaliation, legal or otherwise, and it could put them on the hook for billions of euros in the future if Russia decides to take it to the courts. And there was attempts to try and alleviate those concerns, to try and share the consequences, share the pressure amongst European countries. But ultimately, I think doubts started to creep in many other countries as the negotiations worked their way into the early hours of the morning.
You really want one? Yes. Christmas Comedy Double, Wednesday from 7:30.
The largest gun buyback scheme since the Howard-era reforms to be undertaken of the Bondi terror attack.
There are now more than 4 million firearms in Australia, more than on the after massacre.
7 men arrested in Sydney over fears of another violent attack have been released from police custody. The southeast swelters with the summer heatwave expected to continue into the weekend. Sydney hit 42 today. And Australia extends its lead past 330 in the third Ashes test in Adelaide. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Joe O'Brien. The government will launch a national gun buyback scheme targeting surplus, newly banned and illegal firearms. The Prime Minister has described it as the largest buyback since Howard-era reforms introduced in the aftermath of the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. So states and territories will be responsible for collecting and destroying the weapons and will split the cost of the scheme equally with the Commonwealth. Mr Albanese has also decreed this Sunday to be a day of reflection to honour the victims of the terror attack, with a national day of mourning to follow sometime in the new year.
There are now more than 4 million firearms in Australia, more than at the time of the Port Arthur massacre, nearly 30 years ago. The government will introduce legislation to support the funding of this buyback scheme and meet the costs on a 50-50 basis with states and territories. We expect hundreds of thousands of firearms will be collected and destroyed through this scheme. Consistent with the approach that was taken in 1996, the government is proposing that states and territories will be responsible for the collection, processing and payment to individuals for surrendered firearms. The Australian Federal Police will then be responsible for the destruction of these firearms. The national gun buyback scheme is on top of the work that was agreed by National Cabinet on Monday, limiting the number of firearms to be held by any one individual, limiting open-end.
Africa News. The news.
The attempted coup in month should be seen as a wake-up call for institutional reform, the UN Security Council heard on Thursday. While the swift response from West African allies and ECOWAS helped to foil the takeover, officials said the attempt was a symptom of fundamental problems.
Experience across the region shows that governance reforms perceived as exclusionary erode legitimacy and fuel popular discontent. The 7 December coup attempt in Benin, so close to presidential and legislative elections scheduled for early 2026, further urges the need for broad consultation and transparency on constitutional and governance reform processes.
Benin's ambassador to the UN said the issues that led to the attempted overthrow are present across West Africa, a region in a number of failed and successful coups in recent years, including in November in Guinea-Bissau. The events of the 7th of December must not be analysed in isolation. They're part of a text. Challenge. In a context where certain regional mechanisms are weakened or inoperative, the United Nations remains the central multilateral framework for documenting facts, exercising collective vigilance, and preventing any escalation. Also on Thursday, Benin's President Patrice Talon denied that the events constituted a coup attempt, calling it instead an attack carried out by thugs and small-time terrorists. Talon said there was no support from the population, no significant section of the army joined in.
On the 20th of October, the Atlassians now lift the Arab Cup. It's a player and the support of Moroccan people who are always behind the national team. Relief at the end of a thrilling final in Jordan, far from Doha, where the competition bringing together teams in 6 from Africa came to an end. Cafes are packed at office closing time. Morocco opened the scoring early, but Jordan turned the game around with 2 goals in the second half. In the first half, we played well. At the beginning of the second
Hello and welcome to Back in France 24. I'm Cami Knight and these are your headlines this hour. The EU decided to loan Ukraine €90 but fails to agree on using frozen Russian assets after resistance from Belgium. The Kremlin's military goals will be achieved in Ukraine, says the Russian president as he holds his annual news conference, setting the tone for the coming year. And the Australian government has a gun buyback scheme in the wake of its deadliest mass shooting in decades.
His end-of-year news conference. The Russian leaders prepare to war, but Kyiv is ready for talks. And China promises forceful measures after the White House announces an election.
Most watched, most trusted. Now on Disney Plus every night. Tonight there's breaking news as we come on the air in the West. There has been a major breakdown. Deadly sources telling ABC News there had been a possible connection with the murder of an MIT professor just days later. And then tonight, police moving in the images from the scene, and Matt Rivers standing by with this major turn tonight. Also breaking this evening, the plane crash killing a NASCAR legend and his family. The horrific moment of the crash in North Carolina, a small jet going down in rain and fog, trying to return, crashing hundreds of feet short of the runway. At least 7 people killed, including a NASCAR great, his wife, and his children, and what we know so far. Also tonight, we're tracking this major storm moving into the Northeast. More than 100 million Americans under high wind alerts. Dangerous wind gusts, snow, freezing rain hitting the Northeast tonight and tomorrow. Sam Champion standing by with the forecast. At the White House tonight, President Trump acknowledging health care premiums.
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.